We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph and Mesechet Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 72a. The Gemara asked on the previous Amud, why is it that Klal Yisrael in the Midbar did not get bris milah? And the Gemara now says, V'boy same. If you want, I could say another answer. Mishum delo noshiv lehu ruach tzifonis. It's because the northern wind did not blow. Rashi over here says ruach tzifonis. Nocha, that is a pleasant wind. Lochama velo tzonenes. Not too hot, not too cold. V'chama zorachas. The sun is shining, so therefore that's why they did not get bris milah. Rashi continues over here, lo nashvel hem ruach tzifonis biyom velo zarcha chama aleim. It didn't blow during the daytime, and the sun didn't shine upon them. The Tanyas we learned in a brayso, kolosan arboim shana shayu Yisrael ba midbar. It says all of those 40 years that Klal Yisrael was in the midbar, lo nashvel hem ruach tzifonis, the northern wind did not blow. My time, and what is the reason why the northern wind did not blow? Iba yisayim mishum de nezufim have. If you want, I could say the reason is because they were nezufim, they were distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rashi over here says, mishum de nezufim hayu imayso ha'egel. That's because of the sin that they did with the egel. V'lo hayu rogan le'or noga. They were not fit. They did not merit that light from the ruach tzifonis. If you want, I could say another answer. The lo nivdor anane covered. That way, the anane covered would not become scattered. Rashi over here says, mishum hachi lo nashva. It didn't blow for the following reason: kihechi to lo nivdoru anane covered shem akifin v'lo isachama yechola likones. It was in order that the anane hakovered should not spread out, that were surrounding them, and then again the sun was not able to enter, and that's why they were not able to have bris milah. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Papa says, Hilkach, therefore, Yoma de'eva v'yoma deshusa. Rashi over here says, Yoma de'eva means Yom ha'ma'unan. If you have a cloudy day, and what's Yoma deshusa is Sharuach deromis min hasheves. That's when the southern wind is blowing. V'hikasha mikol aruchos. That's the most difficult of all of the winds. On these kind of days, Lo mohalinan bei, we shouldn't have bris milah. V'lo misochrinan bei. It says over here, Girsas ha'arach misovrinan. V'ayin b'meseches avodah zarah. And the Mesoras Hashas is referencing over here the Gemara in Avodah Zarah that talks about bloodletting. So on these days of Yom De'eva and the Yom Deshusa, you shouldn't have bris milah, you shouldn't let blood. But the Gemara concludes that nowadays the Dashu Barab, and that many people do this anyways, Shomer Pesayim Hashem, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects those who are not aware that this is dangerous, so we have protection from these situations. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Kolosan arboim shana shahayu Yisrael ba'midbar. All of those 40 years that Klal Yisrael was in the wilderness, lo haya yom shelo noshva bo ruach tzifonis bechatzi halayla. There was no day where the northern wind did not blow at midnight. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, vayihi bechatzi halayla v'Hashem hika kol bechor v'gomer. It says that it was at midnight that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hit all the bechor, killed all the bechors in Eretz Mitzrayim. Now the question is, what's the connection between the fact that at midnight there was Makas Bechoros and the idea that the 40 years that they were in the wilderness, the Ruach Tzifonis would blow? That's what the Gemara asks. My Talmuda, what exactly is the limit over here? And the Gemara says, Hakamash Malan, no, what it's coming to teach us is the Eis Ratzon Milsahi, that the Eis Ratzon, a time that is a time where HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks kindly upon us at certain times during the day, that actually is substantial. Rashi over here says, Eis Ratzon Milsahi, V'kevan dechatzos halayla Eis Ratzon havoy, Lamakas Bechoros. The point is as follows. Since Chatzos Halayla was an Eitz Ratzon for Makas Bechoros, Havanami Eitz Ratzon l'Ruach Tzifonis. It also was an Eitz Ratzon that the northern wind would blow. Ve'ein lach yom sheruach tzifonis ein min hasheves bo bechatzi halayla. There's no day where we find that the northern wind doesn't blow at midnight. That is a time of an Eitz Ratzon. V'zel yasimin l'David kinor tolilo l'mala mimitaso v'nikva klapet safon kevan sheigia Chatzos Laila Ruach Tzifonis min hasheves bo u'menagen meilo v'huneir. Is a famous Gemara by David HaMelech that the Ruach Tzifonis would blow at midnight, and then it would cause that the instrument would make some sound and wake David HaMelech up. Now the reason why it says here 40 years, Lomar Lach, what it's trying to tell you is Shafilu Osan Mem Shana de Nezuvim Hayu. Even these 40 years where they were distanced from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Velo Nashvaluhu B'Yamim, and the northern wind didn't blow during the day, like we said in the previous sugya. Nashvalu B'Chatzos Laila Misham Deis Ratzon. It still blew at Chatzos Laila because that was an Eis Ratzon. The Gemara continues, Amar Rav Huna says, Dvar Torah on a Doraisa level, Moshuch Ochel B'Truma. Let's say a person's foreskin, after they have bris milah, is drawn out, covers up the area of the milah, so it looks like, it appears that they don't have a bris milah. So on a Doraisa level, they're still considered that they have a bris milah, and if the person's a Kohen, he can eat Truma. Umidivreim, however, on a Derabanan level, Gazru Olav Mimnei Shanira Ka'arel. They said that there's a Gezer Midrabanan on such a person, because the person appears to be an Arel, so he should not have truma. Rashi over here says, Mashach mohul shenimshacha arlaso. The arla is pulled, even though he had a bris milah. The chisas atara, it covers up the area of the atara, and again, that's why there's a derabanan that person should not eat truma. And the Gemara continues, Meisve, we have the following question, Mashach tzarech sheyimol. It says that if a person is mashach, again, if the arla is drawn and covers up the atara, the person requires bris milah. So the Gemara assumes that means to say it requires bris milah on a doraisa level. And the Gemara answers simply midrabanan. It just means he requires bris milah on a derabanan level, but not on a doraisa level. Gemara says such an obvious answer. Dekari la mai kari la. What was the question in the first place? Hatzarech katani. It says he requires it. It doesn't say anything about on a doraisa level, as Rashi over here says. Hatzarech katani midrabanan. He requires it midrabanan. Midalo katani mashach harei ze'arel. And Rashi's on the contrary. If it would have been doraisa, it should have said that if it's mashach, that person is considered an arel. It doesn't say it's considered an arel. It just says tzarech. So on the contrary, tzarech implies that it's only a derabanan requirement. So again, what was the question in the first place? And the Gemara answers, the question was katoi b'seifa. The Gemara was making a mistake. The person asking the question was making a mistake based on the end of that brisa. The brisa says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, lo yimol mipnei shesakana hilo. Rabbi Yehuda says he shouldn't have another bris milah because already that's dangerous. Rashi over here says, shesakana hilo shamayasa kroshavcha. We're afraid the person's going to become a kroshavcha and sever that area of the body, and it's dangerous. So therefore they responded, Amru lo. So they responded to Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim responded, Valo harbe malu b'mei ben kuziba. There were many people that had multiple bris milos during the times of ben kuziba. That's the same as bar kochba. Vaholidu banim uvanos, and they were able to have sons and daughters. They were able to give birth to children. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, himol yimol. It even says a double language, afilu mea pamim, even if it's 100 times they have bris milah. V'yomer, and the pasuk also says as brisi hefar. It says the pasuk says as brisi hefar lerabos as hamoshach, means that a person who's mashach with the arla, he pulls the arla. You can do that manually also. A person who pulls his arla and covers up the bris milah, that's like a rebellion against the bris milah. And so the Gemara first says, my v'yomer. What's the v'yomer here? Why do you need two psukim? First you have himol yimol, and then you also have esbrisi hefar. So the Gemara explains, v'chitema himol yimol l'rabos tzitzin hama'akvim esamila. You might think that himol yimol means you have to go back and take care of any of the extra pieces of flesh, like we mentioned earlier, that tzitzin, the extra pieces of flesh that might remain behind, that are ma'akev the milah, that require that they be removed. That might be what himol yimol means. So therefore, tashma esbrisi hefar, that's why we bring the additional pasuk of esbrisi hefar l'rabos to include the mashach, to include the situation where the arla is drawn over the atara. And in any case, now the Gemara explains why this seifa presented some confusion for the one asking the question on Rav Huna. Because who savar midakanasiv lahashas kra doraisahi. The person who asked the question on Rav Huna understood that this bris at the end is bringing psukim. So it sounds like it's a doraisa halacha. But the Gemara says, Veloi, it's not true midarabanan, it's only a derabanan halacha, ukra asmachta bi'alma. The pasuk is just a support, but it is not the source. And Rashi over here says, Bimei ben kuziba, what happened during the times of Bar Kochba, shemoshchem ovdei kochavim ba'ones. What happened was that the idol worshippers, they actually forced them to pull the foreskin, to pull the arla over the atara. Bekrach Beitar v'govra yad ben kuziba. This happened in the city of Beitar, and then ben kuziba, he was victorious. V'nilcham, and he fought against them. V'nitzcham, and he succeeded. U'malach al Yisrael shtei shanim u'mechza, and what happened was he became king for 2.5 years. V'chazru molo b'yamav. So that's why they had the bris milah again during that time period. That's why they had multiple, at least 2 bris milas each, because they had to do it because of the situation where the arla was pulled over the atara. And then the Gemara said, "Hu savar ahuda osiv le'el Rav Huna." The one asking the question, Rav Huna thought, "May reisha savar midanasvi lo rabbanon limud le'melsayim midoraisa." So he thought the rabbanon are bringing psukim. It must be doraisa. Alma midoraisa. They're bringing psukim from the Torah. So you see that it's a doraisa. And again, the Gemara concludes, no, it's only midrabbanon. The pasuk is just an asmachta. And the Gemara continues, Meisve, we have the following question: Tumtum ein ochel betruma. Tumtum is not allowed to eat truma. Rashi over here says, Shemim haya nikra yimtza zocher v'arei. The problem is, maybe what's going to end up, it's going to tear that area of the skin, and we'll see that he's a male. A tumtum, again, is a person that we can't determine if he's male or female because there's skin covering up the aver. So the problem is going to be, if he is a male, that's a problem, because then he's an orel, then he's an uncircumcised male. So that's why it says a tumtum cannot eat truma. Noshav v'avod of ochlin now his wives and his servants, they are allowed to eat truma. Rashi mentions over here, Lakamon Mefarish, Noshim Latumtum Minole. The Gemara later will explain why does the tumtum have a wife. This is problematic. A tumtum is not able to have relations because, again, that whole aver is covered over. But in any case, it says over here his wives and his servants can eat truma. Moshuch v'noler kishumo. Let's say you have a person who is moshuch. That's our case, where you have a situation where the arla is pulled over the area of the atara. Or let's say you have a person who was born and he already had a bris milah. Hare elu ochlim. These individuals also, they're allowed to eat truma. Androgynous ochel b'truma. And androgynous is a person who has both signs of a male and a female. He's allowed to eat truma. Ve'ein ochel b'kachim. However, an androgynous cannot eat kachim. Tumtum, when it comes to a tumtum, eino ochel. He's not allowed to eat lo b'truma v'lo b'kachim. He can't eat truma and he can't eat kachim. The Gemara will address why it seems to repeat this idea that a tumtum cannot eat truma. We just said that at the beginning of the brisa. And Rashi over here explains androgynous mohul. The androgynous, the case we're talking about, is when he had a bris milah. Remember, he has signs of both male and female. Mutter lechol b'truma. He can eat truma, mimanashach, both ways. Bein shuish, bein shuisha, whether he's a man or a woman, because a woman can have truma, and a man also in that situation can have truma. Bein shu birya b'fnei atzma, even if he's just a birya, he's not a man or a woman. Let's say he's considered something else. In all cases, zaro shel kohen, who in all of those cases he is considered the zara, the child of the kohen. V'enochel b'kodshim b'kodshe kodshim kamayri. Rashi says we're talking about what's known as kodshe kodshim, kagon chatos v'yashim, that refers to karban chatos or karban asham v'shirei menachos, or also mincha. Shein necholin ela lezichrei kahuna. Those things can only be eaten by kohanim who are males. V'zeh suffik ishu, and this guy is a suffik. He might be a woman. And then it said again, tumtum eino ochel. It repeated l'kamon mefarish amai hader naket. Later on, we'll explain why we're repeating this halach about a tumtum not having truma. And in any case, the Gemara continues, katani mihas. Nevertheless, what does it say in this brisa? It says mashach v'noler kishumol. It says if you have the case of mashach, that's the very case we're talking about, or a situation of a person who was born already with a bris milah. Hare elu ochlin. These individuals are allowed to eat truma. Tiyufta de Rav Huna, tiyufta, and this seems to be a refutation of Rav Huna. Rashi over here explains, katani miyas mashach ochel alma lo gazer aleh. You see, there's not even a gzer midrabanan on a mashach. Rav Huna said that on a doraisa level, the mashach is allowed to have truma, but not on a derabanan level. Here it sounds like even on a derabanan level, it is okay. Tiyufta de Rav Huna, that's a refutation of Rav Huna. T'amar midivreihen gazer alav tiyufta. It is indeed a refutation of Rav Huna, who said that on a derabanan level, this mashach cannot have truma. Now Rashi does continue with another understanding of our Gemara. Lishna achrina garsin and lema messiah leila Rav Huna. Some people have this brisa as a support for Rav Huna, and it means as follows: Tumtum eino ochel v'aya ochlin demashach v'noler mol midoraisa kamar. If you're going to learn this as a supporter for Rav Huna, the brisa means to say a mashach on a doraisa level only can eat truma, not on a derabanan level. V'siyata de Rav Huna, that would be a support for Rav Huna. V'zu shamati. Rashi says, I heard this pshat. V'hi niras ikar. This actually seems like a better pshat. I mean, because the Gemara later is going to say, let us say it's a machlokas tanoim. My lab b'hakam eflegi demar savar doraisa, mar savar derabanan. And the Gemara is going to say one opinion holds as doraisa, one holds derabanan. And al molekula mandam achshel lagamri. From that Gemara, it sounds like there is no opinion that actually allows a mashach to have truma. So that's why this opinion seems a little bit like a better opinion to say that the only machlokas is whether it's aser midoraisa or whether it's aser midarabanan. And in any case, like we said before, according to the first version of Rashi, the Gemara concludes, Tiyufta de Rav Huna. Tiyufta, this is indeed a refutation of Rav Huna. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, Tumtum eino ochel b'truma. A tumtum is not allowed to eat truma. Again, the problem is he might be a male, and then he would be an uncircumcised male. And Nasha ve'avadav ochlim, but his wives and his servants, they are allowed to eat truma. So the Gemara says, Nashav l'tumtum minole. How is it that a tumtum has a wife if he's not able to have relations? And the Gemara says, Ilayma de Kaddish. Now, if you're going to say that he does a kiddushin, meaning it's a situation where they're betrothed, but they never had any relations. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, tumtum shekidesh kiddush of kiddushin. If a tumtum is mekadesh, a woman, that kiddushin is effective. Or niskadesh kiddush of kiddushin. Let's say the tumtum takes the place of the woman, and the man is mekadesh the tumtum. That is also effective. So maybe you'll say that's all that happens over here. There's no act of relations, but it's just a kiddushin. But the Gemara says that doesn't make sense. We can say that brisa means we'll have to be strict and assume maybe there's a kiddushin over here, because again, we don't know whether this tumtum is a man or a woman, and there's a possibility that it was a good kiddushin. But l'kula mi'arminan. But do you think we're going to be lenient and say that it was a kiddushin, like in this case over here? You're going to assume that this is actually his wife and she can have truma. That doesn't make any sense. So, as the Gemara says, safek ishu, this individual over here, the tumtum is a safek. He might be a woman. A woman cannot be mekadesh another woman. So again, it's a case of suffix, so we wouldn't be lenient in such a case and allow the wives to have truma. And so the Gemara says, Omar Abaya says that the case over here where you have a tumtum with a wife is in a very specific case. Kishabeitzav nikaros mibachutz. The case is you actually can see his testicles from the outside. In other words, you actually know in this particular line in the Brisa, you happen to know that he's a male. Rashi over here says, maybe he did a kiddushin and maybe he's a male and maybe it's good. Tatanya tumtum shakidesh kiddush of kiddushin misafik utzricha get. We say since there's a doubt, we assume maybe it is a kiddushin and a get is required. And the other way around also the Brisa said, niskadesh kiddush of kiddushin. Let's say he receives a kiddushin. It's good. V'nafkamina litzurei. Nafkamina is again, you have to prohibit him. You have to assume maybe he's married. Again, you have to say, let's say the person who was Mekadesh the Tumtum, he won't be able to be Mekadesh, the sister of the Tumtum, the mother of the Tumtum, because maybe it really was a good Kiddushin. But that all makes sense, like the Gemara said, L'chumra dabinon get mina. Okay, we have to be strict, we have to require a get. But l'kule mi'amrina, are we going to be lenient in a chazke gezocher vadei v'yachel bas Yisrael b'truma? We're going to say he's for sure a male and allow the bas Yisrael to have truma because we assume they're married. That doesn't make any sense. So again, the Gemara said, how are we going to understand this over here? And so Abaya over here says again, because kishabeitzav nikaros mibachutz, we're talking about a specific tumtum where we're able to identify that he is a male. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar, Rava says, no, my noshav, what does it mean, his wives? It doesn't mean his wives. Imo, it means his mother, meaning all it means is that he let's say he is the descendant of this woman who was married to a Kohen. Let's say her husband died. So the halacha again is if a Bas Yisrael has a child with a Kohen, that's enough to allow her to continue eating truma. So it simply means over here, if her child happens to be a tumtum, it's still considered a child, and so the mother can have truma. The Gemara says that's so obvious. Imo pshita, if it's the mother, of course she can have truma. Why would we say that just because he's a tumtum, she can't have truma? If he's a tumtum, he might be a male, he might be a female. Either way, she had a descendant from a Kohen. Of course she could have truma. And so the Gemara says, no, it's a little bit of a chiddush ma'u deteim. What might you have thought? Molid machil she'en molid eno machil. Maybe a child who's able to have another child, that allows his mother to eat truma. But a child who can't have a child himself, that would not allow his mother to eat truma. Kamash Malana comes to teach us that's not a relevant factor. It doesn't matter if he's molid or not. Rashi says, molid machil asima b'truma. A molid could allow his mother to have truma. Why would that be true? The daikin love yelid beso, because the language of the pasuk is yelid, beroy laholid. And maybe you say it has to be somebody who's fit to have children. So that's coming to teach us the child does not have to be able to have children. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come in here, and this is the end of the Brisa. Like we said, the end of the Brisa seems superfluous, a repeat of the same thing. It said, Tumtum eino ochel lo b'truma v'lo b'kachim. A tumtum is not allowed to eat truma, and is also not allowed to eat kachim. And so the Gemara says, Bishlam ala Abaya. Now I understand according to Abaya. So Abaya said that in the first case of the Brisa, where we're talking about a tumtum who has a wife, there we're talking about a tumtum that we actually can identify, we can see that he's a male. So that would make sense why we have two cases of tumtum in the Brisa. Tana Reisha Orel Vadai, because in the beginning of the Brisa, we're talking about someone that is certainly an Orel. In other words, we know that he's a male, and you know that he's an Orel because he's not circumcised. The Katani Seifa Safik Orel, and then the end of the Brisa is a case of a tumtum that's really a suffix. We don't even know whether he's a male, so it's a suffix whether that individual is an Orel. Elul Rava, but according to Rava, tumtum de Seifa Lamali. What do you need the tumtum case in the Seifa? It's exactly the same case. According to Rava, we're always talking about a situation of a genuine suffix. We don't know if this individual is a male or a female. And so the Gemara answers, my tumtum, no. What does it mean, tumtum? Arel, it actually means the case of an arel. In other words, the tumtum at the end of the Brisa is referring to just a regular arel. But the Gemara says that doesn't make sense either. Hashta suffik arel lo achil. If you already told us in the beginning of the Brisa that a suffix situation of arel doesn't eat truma, vaday arel achil, does anybody think the vaday arel is going to allow to eat truma? That doesn't make any sense. And so the Gemara says, no, it's matam kamar. The Brisa really, according to Rava, is just explaining the reason for the beginning of the Brisa. Matam tumtum eino ochel, but truma, what is the reason that a tumtum does not eat truma? Mipneisha suffik arel, because he's a suffik arel, vi arel eino ochel lo b'truma v'lo b'kachim, and the halach is an arel that is not allowed to eat truma and is not allowed to eat kachim. And the Gemara now says, Leima ketanoi. Let us say that this is a machlokes tanoim. Rashi over here says, Neima ketanoi milsa de Rav Huna, meaning what Rav Huna said before. Rashi alluded to this part of the Gemara before. Tanai, let's say it's a machlokes tanoim. You have a moshach dorais or derabban. In other words, if you have a case of moshach, is that a situation where that person requires bris milah on a doraisa level, or is that a situation where the bris milah is only required on a derabbanan level? Let us say that's a machlokes tanoim as follows. It says, let's say you have a situation of a moshech, that is our case. V'ger shenisgayer keshumol. Let's say you have a case of a ger, somebody who converts and he already had a bris milah when he was not Jewish. V'katan she'avar zmanu, or let's say you have a situation of a case of a katan, but the time for getting the bris milah, the 8th day, has already passed. Ushar kol hanimolim, and all of the other situations of nimolim, of people who require bris milah, leisuye mi sheyesh lo shtei arlos, that would include somebody who has 2 arlos. Rashi over here says shtei arlos beis orozu al gabezu. You have 2 of the skins, two skins covering that area of the body, one on top of the other. We'll take a look at Rashi, one back Rashi. First of all, Rashi says v'noler kishumol. That was in parentheses in the brisa. Shetzarach lahatif mimenu dam bris. A person's born with a bris milah, you still need to draw some blood. And then we also had a case of v'ger sheniskayer kishumol, kagon aravi v'givoni sheniskayer. Let's say, for example, an Arab or a Givoni, they had a bris milah not for the purpose of Judaism, then they converted. V'tzarach lahatif mimenu dam bris. From them also, you're going to need to draw a little bit of blood in order to really make it considered to be a bris in terms of being Jewish. So in other words, in all of these cases, what does it say? Einon nimolin elabiyom. The Tanna Kama says all of these individuals who need to get bris milah, they can only have their bris milah during the daytime, like a standard bris milah that you'd give a child on the 8th day. These individuals as well have to have it during the day. And the brisa continues. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says bismanu, if the bris milah takes place on the proper time, meaning on the 8th day. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis.